there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Meaghan.
And I'm Shirin.
And we are talking about kids' books today. Yay!
Yay! Because it's a lot happier than all the other things in the world.
We're talking about nostalgic stuff this week. That's exciting. I think we're just going to take it easy today and kind of keep things light. The state of the world does not feel light. And I don't know what it's going to feel like by the time you guys are listening to this episode in a few weeks, but God knows.
God knows. We just found out that Biden's stepping down.
Yeah, so we're just going to have to see how that goes. Yes, okay, before everybody, yes, we're Canadian, we know, but we also live right next door. Yeah. So
we worry about what's going on in our neighbors' yards.
Yeah, we worry about what's going on right below us.
The neighborhood.
Yeah, we worry about what's happening right below us most of the time. But anyway, who cares about that right now? We're here to talk about children's lit for the month of August. So, by the way, I need to start plugging this more just because I feel like it. We have a team of, talented contributors who are regularly writing articles with us and contributing all kinds of interesting and insightful stuff over at fullybooked.ca. So if you guys ever want to go over there, search for specific types of books, recommendations for things, there's lists, there's editorials, and some deep dives into stuff about all kinds of different genres and subgenres. So if you guys are interested in that, you can definitely go and check that out over at the website because everybody's doing a really great job, and I think that they deserve a lot of credit for it. So,
oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I am garbage at writing anything for the site, as Meaghan likes to remind me on a quarterly basis.
Yeah,
she's not wrong.
She has ideas, and then she just never writes.
I get analysis paralysis.
You get anxiety about it, you're worried that it's not going to be good. And
that's exactly what it is. It might not be good. And she was like, man, wouldn't it be great if we had someone else to contribute who's really good at writing and has great ideas? And I'm like, who? And she's like, you
idiot. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about kids' books today, and we're talking about children's lit from the perspective of people who are no longer children. However, when we were both very avid readers, and we had a lot of favorites, and I'm sure that that's the case for most people. I think that, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I think when you think about your favorite books, when you think back and you're like, what are my favorite books? People ask you, what's your favorite book, or what are your favorite books? Because I can never just keep it to just one, if I'm honest. It's always really the first ones that you think of are the ones that you read when you were young.
Yeah.
You can read books now, don't get me wrong, and they'll be incredible, and you're so into them, but it's really hard, I find, for even those books that I've read in the last 5 years, for me to be oh, is this one of my favorite books? Is this what I would answer if someone asked me what my favorite books are?
It's so true, and the older you get, the more, the harder it becomes to, when somebody says to you, oh, well, what's your favorite book? It's well, I can't really answer that. It depends on the mood I'm in, it depends on the day, depends on what genre, subgenre, age group. But I was actually having this conversation with my husband the other day, when I first read Harry Potter, which was obviously one of the ones on my list.
Yeah.
It was such this experience where you just knew that you were never going to get that feeling back again.
No,
because you had this piece of magic in your hands. And it was I think it was the first time that I was true, I had read a lot of books at this point, but I was truly immersed in this world that it felt that I literally stuck my head in the book and I was in there.
And not paying attention to any of the periphery around you, completely lost in it. Someone would have had to shout your name to get your attention.
They would have had to literally yank me out of the book. You know what I mean? And so it's there were no words to describe that feeling. And it's as a reader, it's almost you continue to chase that feeling. And sometimes you're lucky enough to grab it, but not often.
No.
No.
Yeah. No, it's true. So I think that we can't help but come back to that, the kids, the things that you read from the ages of, I don't know, maybe 7 to 13 or 14 kinds of things. Those were just fundamental reads for you and there are so many of them that's it. You get that feeling with where you were completely immersed in them, and you're I can reread them as many times as I want, but I will never feel exactly the same as I did the first time that I read it.
It's every time time somebody says to me, like, oh, I've never read Harry Potter, I'm like, oh my God, you're so lucky. Like, what I would give to go back and be able to read those books again.
I also have to question something, like, you know, like Harry Potter or something along those lines. God, what would it be like to read that for the first time at my age now?
Well, that's it. As I was just saying that, I was like, I feel like it just wouldn't be quite the same.
Maybe not.
Because, like, you know, like, I got my husband to read them, like, when we first met, which was, like, a decade ago.
Yeah.
And he was in his late 20s, early 30s at that point. And so, you're old. And so at that point, like, he was like, yeah, like, they're good. Like, he made his way through them quite quickly, and he was like, yeah, they're good. But I was like, you have to read them!
Yeah,
you know, like saliva coming out of your mouth.
Just,
you know, like
spitting at someone. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I think you're right. So maybe it was good that we just read things at the age that we did read things.
Well, I mean, you know, I read the first one when I was 11, which was when you would have got your Hogwarts letter, you know?
Yeah, that's true, actually. So I mean, I'm like 2 years older than you, but I was a little earlier than that, because I think I read the first one when I was like 9-ish, 8 or 9 or something like that. And then I breezed through the first 2, and then I think the third one maybe had like kind of come out by the time I was through that one. And then I remember being in the 6th grade and reading like Goblet of Fire.
Yeah.
Because that was the one that had just been published, and it was a really big deal.
Yeah.
So, So, okay. Outside of those things, let's just say, if we go outside of like the Harry Potter of it all, yes, we know it was fundamental.
It's granted.
Yes, we know. We know. For the majority
we know.
I know. You know.
And we know all the shite that's come with that since, but anyway.
We're aware, but we're just, I guess, looking at it from the perspective of the novels themselves. Yeah. It's very hard to separate things, but sometimes it starts to feel like if you went down the rabbit hole with a lot of people in the world of art in any way, shape, or form, you're like, God, I'd never read anything again, watch anything again, listen to anything again.
Well, you know, I was actually, again, thinking about this the other day. My beef, and I'm sure the beef that everybody has with J.K. Rowling, is that, like, she literally wrote an entire book series about being accepted and being different.
I know, it's so stupid.
And it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
if you
it's being different, but only to a certain point, and only the way I want you to be different.
No, but like, even then, like, I was thinking about it, she's got, like, you know, half-breeds in there and stuff, and, like, she's got everything in there, and every side and perception and perspective, she makes the argument that everybody needs to be accepted because everybody is human inside, or whatnot, whatever the message is. Yeah. And, like, but if you took somebody like Orson Scott Card, for example, Ender's Game is just littered with homophobic references. So it's like, it's not even a surprise that he's a homophobe.
No, it doesn't come out of left field quite in the same way.
But it's like, it's the ridiculousness of the fact that she is who she is, and it's like, how dare you? Anyway, okay, I'm done.
All right, it's fine. It was a side rant.
Sorry, had to.
No, it's okay. We're on to happier topics about it. So, okay, start listing things for me, Shirin. What are fundamental reads that you can like think back on in like the children's lit space? What were these reads that you were just like, I am never going to forget about this?
Okay, I've got like a few of them. I'm going to start with. Let me see here. I gotta like pick. I'm sure I can't read all of these off.
It's okay. We don't have to talk about them in detail, but we can just like,
list them. Okay. So A Series of Unfortunate Events.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed because what I really liked about Lemony Snicket was that his writing was not like happy-go-lucky. It was like jokingly like serious.
I guess it seems like it was very glib, like very dark comedy kind
very
of.
Much.
Yeah.
And he always had this thing where he had to introduce like a notion in detail in his books. Okay. So, like, whether it be a definition of a word or, like, something like the element of surprise. Okay. And he would bring it back throughout the books. And so, like, I really appreciated that because it was also, like, you were learning something as you were reading them, too.
Yeah.
And I liked the kids. I liked the characters. Like, it was kind of quirky. Okay. So, yeah, that one I read the whole thing, but I was getting kind of old by the time the last one came out. I don't think I actually read the last one, but anyway, that's my first one. How about you?
Okay, so I don't know if I should start from maybe like the younger kids end of the spectrum, possibly. Okay, so if I start with the younger kids end of the spectrum, you have to talk about Dr. Seuss because you have to talk about Dr. Seuss.
Oh, okay, we're going that young. Okay.
No, that's what I meant. No. Children's lit for me is everything from 0 to like 12.
Oh, okay, so. fair.
So if I'm thinking about that, if I had to pick one as far as like I remembered it and it affected me in some way, it was The Lorax when I was a kid. Okay. It was the first story that really explained anything to me about the environment and what our impact on the environment can be if we're not careful. Yeah. And I remembered it so well after I read it. Yeah. And that was just something that has always stayed with me since then. And just like the knowledge of that, I feel came from that story more than anything.
We were never really a Dr. Seuss household. I think he annoyed the shit out of my mom.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
She just didn't like him, so I never had any Dr. Seuss, but I had a lot of, like, Robert Munch. So if I'm looking at,
I've got one in there, too.
Kids books, like, I'd probably go, like, Robert Munch and then obviously Roald Dahl as well.
Yes, of course.
But Robert Munch, like, Good Families Don't. The fart. And then, obviously, I Love You Forever.
I Love You Forever is a big... I Love You Forever is Robert Munch?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay, yeah.
And then there was the kid with his snowsuit there where he has to go pee.
Oh, God. The snowsuit one's great. My favorite one that I remember Robert Munch-wise growing up was The Paper Bag Princess.
Oh, yes. You do like that one,
I love The Paper Bag Princess. It was, again, like one of those, like, early stories when I was, like, 6 that was just, like, talking to you about, like, girl power and how you don't need a boy to take care of you and you can save everything. And I was like, yes!
Yeah. I need to get that one, actually.
Yeah, it's great. And I remember that one was probably, like, my more impactful one. I Love You Forever just because of the kind of story it is.
I think as a kid, you don't really grasp that one.
No, it's more like you reread it when you get older and you're like, whew.
Oh, that one is a tough one.
Gosh, that's it. But yeah, that one, and I can't remember Thomas's snowsuit, right?
Thomas's snowsuit, something like that. I think it's really funny.
Robert Munch is hilarious. Yeah. So and they're very short, very easy reads. So like if you ever want to get something for your kids, like those are great ones to have. Okay, next, go.
Okay, next. So if I go a little bit older, I was really into this series called Jigsaw Jones. I don't know if anybody remembers this one, but I think I was about 7 maybe when I was reading these. And it was about this little kid who was like a detective. And it was just like these like little throwaway detective stories.
That's so fun though. Those are like
fun. They were cute.
Well, slightly more kid like Nancy Drews and stuff like everybody loves shit like that. Kids solving mysteries is great, guys.
Yeah. And like they weren't anything serious, but I loved those, and there was so many of them in the series.
I think like even if I think back to like classics and stuff like that, like, like obviously we all read like Winnie the Pooh and stuff like that when we were kids. Peter Rabbit for me was probably a bigger one.
Oh, really?
I really liked Peter Rabbit. Like I really liked Beatrix Potter, and I think I liked the rabbits getting into mischief was probably what it was. That aspect of it I always thought was very funny. Yeah. And like, like what is it, like Flopsy and Lopsy and stuff like that. I was always like, there's just like something I think that grabbed my attention when I was a kid, so I tended to do that. In the same vein, because there's still rabbits involved, which is weird, it was Guess How Much I Love You. Guess How Much I Love You is so cute.
I don't think I know that
You've
one.
not read that one?
No.
Oh, it's with the baby hair and the daddy hair. Okay. And they're like, I love you this much. I love you as long as your ears. I love you to the moon and back.
Oh, yes. I think I know this one. Yeah, it's cute.
It's adorable. So I don't know why those were ones that were like on my radar a lot when I was a kid. Because like, you had all your really easy ones like Goodnight Moon.
I was going to say.
And the Very Hungry Caterpillar and stuff like that. Like all of those ones, obviously, which were like much closer to like picture books. But,
was it when we were in Barnes & Noble and you were like, the Very Hungry Caterpillar is the tits?
Yes.
I'm like, okay, are you okay?
It's great. I love those illustrations when I was a kid that it just like follows all the colors and stuff. Those were so fun.
Yeah. So like Roald Dahl would be one that I would put on there for sure.
Yeah, my big ones, Matilda and the Witches.
I was going to say Matilda was definitely one of them, and James and the Giant Peach.
I never read James and the Giant Peach, actually.
I didn't love the Witches. It kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, that's why I liked
skittish.
It. My intro horror exists in this list of books. Yeah. Because if I consider like the Witches, I mean Matilda had like a magic element to it, I guess. Yeah. And Bunnicula was like a big one for me when I was a kid.
I thought that came out later.
No. I remember being young and reading. I was like maybe 8 when I read those. They were like I read like 5 or 6 of them. There's a ton of them. And I loved it. It was so hilarious and silly and funny. And the bunny, for anybody who's not aware, it's essentially about it's from the perspective of a dog who belongs to a family, and they adopt a rabbit, and the rabbit is a vampire, but it just like sucks the orange out of carrots, basically. Yeah. Like it's just so funny. And the dog is fucking terrified of this bunny.
I bet, yeah.
And it's just like it's on like a whole it's hilarious. They're just like silly and cute, and I loved them so much. And there's also, you always remember like the cover of it because it's like a bunny with like glowy eyes and little vampire
Yes,
teeth.
I remember that. I thought it came out later, but
no, that was that one I remember reading when I was pretty young. I think those already existed.
We're gonna have to get some of those.
Yeah, I have a bunch of them at home actually, but we'll have to like track down some copies of some fun stuff for the baby.
Definitely.
Oh god, and then like when you get into like some of the some of the stuff, I guess, that was like a little bit more detailed and had like more messages. Like obviously we talked about Harry Potter, but you Chronicles of Narnia.
No, I never read those.
Really?
So the movie came out when I was probably about 12, maybe.
Wow.
Was I that old?
I don't know.
Anyway, they came out and I was like not that fussed about reading the books.
Wow.
I'd already like read like other books at that point.
I've never read all of them, but I think I've read like 4 of them.
Or have I read? No, I've read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I am a big fat liar. I've read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
I read that after I watched the movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, I read them like when I was a kid. I think I might have been like 10 when I had like picked up. I probably read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe first, and then I read like The Magician's Nephew and like a few of the others. I think I read 4 of them.
Oh
maybe?
no, I only read the one.
3 of them, 4 of them, something like that. And also like A Wrinkle in Time. That was like a big one when I was a kid.
Never read that one either.
Wow.
Haven't seen the movie either.
Oh, the movie's terrible.
I have heard that. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It's so bad. It's a great book. It's really fun and fantastical and so interesting and really posits the idea of like sort of like time travel, like in a way that I had never considered until that age, essentially.
Right.
Like, you never really thought about it in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Those are always cool.
I was, so my mom's from England, and when we would travel to England on trips, I would buy books. And so there were books that were like available and popular in England that aren't over here. And one of them I remember was called Molly Moon's Incredible Book of Hypnotism. And this was one that I picked up, and I just thought it was hilarious. It was about this girl named Molly Moon who lived in an orphanage, and one day she stumbles across a book that teaches her how to hypnotize people.
Okay.
And so her and Petula the pug go on this grand adventure where she hypnotizes her way like to stardom, basically.
Yeah.
And she ends up on Broadway because she has this like giant like magnifying glass that she uses. Like she has to work through like this whole like the whole logistics of how she's going to hypnotize an entire like room full of people into believing that she's actually good on stage. And so she has to get this giant like magnifying glass done and stuff. Anyway, the whole thing is that she's got like a detective on her tail and someone else trying to basically get her to take the fall for a big crime or something. So it's like a really involved story.
The Molly Moon name is like something that seems familiar to me, even though I don't think I've ever read any of the stories.
Right.
But like I don't know, it's like triggering like a memory that I have, or maybe I came across it in a library or something at some point.
It could have been. Like I vividly remember the cover. It was like sparkly silver because it was supposed to be like that was the hypnotism side.
Yeah.
And the pug was on the cover and it had like swirly eyes because it was being, I think she hypnotizes the pug to dance at some point. Anyway, the whole thing is absolutely ridiculous and I thought it was hilarious. I read it when I was like maybe 9 or 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Again, it's always stories for me. I find that like I thought about later because it was like a story that was, I felt, one of my first introductions to a certain type of thing. So like I said with the Lorax, it was like the environment. Even something like Matilda, it was like the idea of like a neglectful family, which, like I was very fortunate as a child. I didn't really have to deal with anything like that. So like a lot of those types of stories. And I feel like in that same vein, my next one would probably be Bridge to Terabithia.
Yes, I've got that on my list too.
Because it was one of the first stories to point out, like so many stories don't point out the kinds of dangers that exist for kids and the fact that accidents can happen that result in, really severe injury or death. In the case of this book, spoiler alert, if you didn't know that, sorry. It's very old, so if you haven't read it, I don't know what to tell you.
It's very sad.
But that was one of those stories that, like, I finished it and I thought about it for days after I read it,
Yep.
After I finished the whole thing, because there is so much of a fantasy element to it that then takes such a different turn, and it's almost like you yourself are following the protagonist through their journey into the fantastical and then falling right back down to earth when they realize,
Well, I think that like this is where the age lines start appearing.
Kind of, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like how they bucket the books in age differences.
Yeah.
And so when you get books like Bridge to Terabithia or like Tuck Everlasting, for example, these are books that invoke emotion and feeling.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, like some of the ones that we've listed here, okay, obviously like Matilda, like depending on the author and whatnot, but like a lot of the books that I've listed, you know, like Molly Moon, Jigsaw Jones, you know, I've got another one here called The Amazing Days of Abby Hayes. All of these are just the sake of having a story for a story to get a child to read.
To read, because they're fun and entertaining.
Exactly. Whereas once you start getting into these other ones that are like kind of encroaching, they're like your bridge into the young adult space. Yeah. They invoke feeling and emotion from you.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like after I get out of that stuff, even if I'm staying in like the fun vein of things, like, see, that's it. I could tell that I liked these things from a very early age because I graduated, like, as I got a little bit older, I graduated from like The Witches and Bunnicula, which were like, here's your little bit of scary, but it's like super cute.
Yeah.
I graduated to Goosebumps. That was my next.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was my next foray.
I had like Goosebumps on the shelf, and I think I attempted to read one once. It was the one with Slappy in it.
Yes, Night of the Living Dummy.
Fuck this. This is fucking terrifying.
I think my favorites when I was younger were that one, Night of the Living Dummy, and Say Cheese and Die.
I had that one too. I hated that one too. They were all way too scary for me.
Oh my God, you're so funny.
And it was so funny because my mom bought them all for me.
Sorry, I don't. Okay.
It does not compute. You know, the woman who would not let me watch anything on TV.
Yeah.
She would buy me all the Goosebumps. I think we used to watch Goosebumps on TV together.
You must have done.
Yeah.
You must have watched like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark and stuff.
I watched them, but I always found that to read them, they were too scary.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you're experiencing that right now a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah, like for the first time, Meaghan's finally convinced me to pick up a horror story.
Yes.
So I'm reading what is it called?
Oh, sorry. It's the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. We love Grady Hendrix. We've interviewed Grady Hendrix in the past. Yeah. He's wonderful.
We stan Grady Hendrix.
Love him. He's wonderful and a really interesting and very, very funny person to talk to. He's he's just very clever, and it comes through immediately in every book of his that you read.
Yeah. And I think the struggle that I have with reading horror versus watching it, because like I was saying this to you earlier, like I will watch a horror movie at home because then I can like look away and do something else, or like stand up and walk around, do a lap around the house and come back.
Do a lap.
But like when you're reading it, you literally have to read it and imagine it to move the story forward. Yes. And so like I'm reading this one.
That is how that works. Yeah.
Yes, I know. Thank you, Meaghan. I'm just explaining myself. But as I'm reading this one, like, you know, in the beginning, like the main character gets attacked and like her ear gets bitten off, but it's like described really graphically, and I'm like, I was literally holding the book out like this, and I was like, whoa, hey, no, but you know, it's like I gotta keep reading it to make it keep going, and I'm like, I don't know if I like this, but I am powering through because it's really good.
It's incredible. I really want I want us to get a horror book and I want to read it to you out loud, and you're not like, I'll put your phone in another room, like you can't even look at it.
You're gonna like swaddle me and force me to sit in one spot.
Make you into a little pregnant blanket burrito.
It's gonna be like that meme, you know, you're gonna be like yelling at me.
Oh yeah, and you're on the couch like I forget what that meme is called, but it's so necessary in so many conversations. It's like your husband trying to explain something to you and you sitting on the couch like, what the fuck? But in this case it would be me. I'm the person standing up trying to explain something to you.
Yeah. So,
so Goosebumps were like a big one. That was one I constantly would, in between other stuff, I like had one on the go. I must have read like 20 or 25 of them when I was a kid, like different ones. And you know, eventually they all kind of fade into one at some point. Yeah. But like most of the time, you remember just like those few like quintessential ones. So you've got like your let's say Cheese and Die, Night of the Living Dummy, The Haunted Mask, like Monsterland or whatever.
With the bugs as well. The big bug guy.
Oh yeah, fuck! I forget what that one was called. I have a whole bunch of them at home still.
I do too.
Yeah, I don't remember what any of them were called, but yeah,
I definitely remember Slappy.
Yeah, Slappy definitely solidified a dislike that I have for like dolls and stuff.
Yeah, because
like
he was so well done.
Yeah, that's it. So I just find like then like in films and stuff, every time there's a haunted doll, I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
It's probably part of the reason I've never really watched like the Annabelle movies or anything, because I'm like, no, I don't really, no, I'm okay.
Aha, we have found the line.
I mean, I'll do it at some point. I just like not, it's not something that I like, you know, think of and I'm immediately like, oh, I want to put this on for fun. Like, no, not really.
Yeah,
not really at all. Yeah. And then I guess as time goes on, you kind of, you do hit this kind of a point where you kind of start to cross over just into like the, I don't know, I guess not adult or not even young adult, but like that slightly more like middle grade level of stuff. Because like most of this stuff that I'm talking about are like I read that shit when I was like quite young. Like most of these things I was like 8, like maybe 7 to 10, the majority of them. And then I got a little bit older, and it's like your own, you know, tastes differ and stuff like that, and you also become like interested in other stuff. So that was when I picked up something like Tuck Everlasting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tuck Everlasting is a slightly more adult concept behind it, essentially. And there's more, like, you know, there's more to do with, like, a romance. And when I was 7, I could not have cared less about that. So I really... Yeah, you know what I mean? You were like, ew, gross. Like, I don't care about any of this. But when you're, like, 11...
Oh, yeah, you're like, ooh.
You're like, okay. And you kind of start... And you understand the dynamics of it better as well, which probably... also lends itself because you start to understand how these things work. Like, don't get me wrong, like, you know, I was not one of those girls who like had a quote unquote boyfriend when I was in primary school. Like, boys were disgusting till I was like 14, honestly.
You would totally be like that.
Yeah, no, they all had cooties. They were all icky. Like, I just wasn't a fan.
And they mostly were, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them still are. So, you know, they never really get past that cootie stage in a lot of cases.
You know, but I was saying to Meaghan that like I used to be able to sneak some books past my mom. So like Gossip Girl was one of them because it had like kind of like the version I got was like a colorful like cartoony.
Yeah, and I didn't some of those covers just have like almost a silhouette of like a girl in like a school uniform or whatever.
I have those somewhere.
Yeah, and I feel like those are. They're so in between, like, you can't tell. Like, you're just like, I don't know what this fucking book's about. It's about someone who goes to a school.
Yeah, well, this is it, right?
You know?
But I got the first one past my mom, and I remember reading that, and I must have been, like, 11 maybe, and I was like, oh, gasp!
Scandal! So much scandal.
Yeah, there was a lot of scandal.
It's when mom doesn't know that you're like, you know, the characters in this book have sex, right?
Yeah,
like,
I know, but you're not going to tell her that.
Like. No. You read it quietly, and that was the end of it. I don't know. I think my mom was fairly aware of what I was reading in terms of the content of it, even if she didn't know all the details. She kind of knew. I mean, most of the time I would tell her what I was reading anyway. Like, I would explain what the book was about. See,
I wouldn't do that because then it would be like, no, you can't read that, and then she'd take it away from me. And I was like, no, I'm halfway through my book.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was lucky enough that I didn't really have that issue. Like, if I, you know, brought up whatever it was sort of like to talk through. I guarantee I told her about Bridget Terabith. Yeah, I'm sure that was something that I mentioned at some point in conversation because it was intense, and I was like, whoa, this character died.
Yeah, that was a lot. I don't actually remember what happens in Tuck Everlasting.
Oh, God. Oh, fuck. I don't remember. You know what I don't remember?
Like immortal or something.
Do you know what we should do? We should do that for our next episode.
That's what we're doing for our next episode.
That's what we're doing for our next episode. We're announcing it ahead of time. We're going to do Spoiler. I haven't seen that movie in a hot ass minute.
I've never seen the movie.
I've seen it once, and I haven't read the book. I think probably since the first time that I read it as like an 11-year-old child. So it's been like over 20 years, which makes me sad to say out loud, but otherwise.
You old too.
Oh, shut up. You're 2 years younger than me. Get it together.
I will hang on.
Just accept how old you are now. We're all in our 30s and it sucks. It's fine.
It really does.
Yeah.
We also can't forget our guy Shel Silverstein.
Oh, like the Giving Tree and stuff.
Where the sidewalk ends.
Those were great. What else did I read when I was like in that like level, kind of when I was like 10, 11, 12? I feel like there was something else. What am I thinking of? Oh, I'm thinking of his Dark Materials. I had started around that time.
Oh, the Golden Compass. Yeah, I read that as well. Yeah,
those,
you're right.
Those felt very well suited to that time period, probably because thingy, Lyra, is like in that age range. Yeah. She's like 12 or 13 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it again, like, it was so fantastical that it was just, that was the thing, right? When we were kids, we read Harry Potter, and then after that, we were all like chomping at the bit for like, what's the next like fantasy world that I can immerse myself in?
I remember finding those ones a little harder to wrap my head around. They were very hard.
There's a science to those, essentially, that you need to, I needed to reread it as I got older.
Yeah. I remember powering through the first one. Yes. Because I found it interesting enough to be able to get through it.
But I started the second one, and I had to wait a long time to go back to it, because I was like, what?
I don't know if I stopped. I don't know if I read the second one and stopped at the third one, but I remember just being like, I can't. It's too hard. You know?
No, it's true. There were a lot of like much more difficult like concepts to grasp, essentially. So
yeah, that was one of the first ones that I was like, oh, this is a tougher one to understand. Yeah.
I agree with you. Oh man, yeah. There are just, I mean, God, like we could go on forever, couldn't we? There are just so many stories that kind of
mark us
and make up who we are as like people when we're young.
I gotta call out Coraline.
Oh yeah,
not in a good way.
Coraline for your trauma. I love how much you love it now as well.
It's great.
Yeah,
fantastic. Terrifying as a child, because I read it when I was like 9.
Yeah, well, that's
it was again one of those, oh my god, this is so hard to read, but I gotta keep reading.
I wish I could like physically describe what Shirin's doing right now. She's like imitating holding a book really far away from her, but like I'm like moving it up and down in zigzaggy motions, like it's somehow going to make the book less scary.
Like if I shake it and I hold it far enough away from my face, that it's not going to infiltrate my brain.
I mean, it's not a magic 8-ball. It's not going to change the answer that you get.
It could.
Oh yeah. So basically, Shirin was traumatized, and I discovered a passion.
I think if I had waited like maybe 3 more years and I'd read Coraline,
yeah, you would have been okay.
I should have started with like the Graveyard Book.
The Graveyard
and I would have loved it.
A little bit more cutesy that way, I guess. Yeah. Wow.
Anyway,
all these things that we did when we were young, I tell you. I was probably not as traumatized as I should have been, and you were not exposed to enough to be able to be traumatized in the first place. So
I don't know. You were in charge of that with this baby to make sure that she is.
Yeah, no, it's completely my job as the cool aunt is just to make sure that she reads and watches every inappropriate thing way before she's supposed to,
and then I just don't want to know about it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. That's what we're gonna do.
It'll be like, don't tell mom. Okay.
Don't tell mom. Great. Cool. You just watch all the fun stuff when you come over to our house, and that'll be how we work.
All it is.
Yep. So I really, we want to know what, like, for you guys, what were like some fundamental reads that you had as kids and like, prior to full young adulthood, essentially, like what were sort of like books that you always remember now and that you think back to all the time. You can let us know about all of that over on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at FullyBookedCA, and you can also check out our Facebook group, which is at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. Until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.